Welcome back to the Purposeful Wisdom Podcast, you guys. My name is Dawn Christine. I am your host. Welcome, welcome. If you guys are coming in for the first time, welcome. If you guys are returning, welcome back. Please like, share, subscribe, help me grow this channel. It's all about healing mentally, emotionally, physically. I bring the best of the best on this platform to educate you guys, to give you more tools in your toolbox so you can do with it what you please. And as always, thank you so much just for spending your time with me. I truly am grateful. I have a wonderful guest on today's show, Mahesh Grossman. I am so excited to bring him to you guys. Mahesh is known worldwide for his hypnotic 1-minute anxiety solutions. He's also the creator of the Defy Trauma process, which finds the childhood root causes of whatever makes us anxious or triggered in just 3 minutes. 3 minutes. I can't wait. I cannot wait. He's going to walk us through this today too. So I'm super excited about this. But his unique perspective is that healing anxiety and trauma isn't about analyzing our trauma stories, but rather releasing the subconscious mental and emotional imprints we still carry from them and transforming them into unconditional self-love. So Mahesh has been on Fox and Friends, Good Day San Diego twice, Good Day Sacramento, Pittsburgh Today Live, and 3 other local morning TV shows. He's also been on stage with Holly Robinson Pete, James Brown, Jack Canfield, Dan Kennedy. He's also been featured in USA Today, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, WebMD, Very Well Mind, Buster, and many more. And has also been featured on radio with The Bright Side, Preferred Company, and the Frankie Boyer Show. Welcome, Mahesh. Thank you so much for being me.
Thanks, Dawn. I'm excited.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome. So you are my very first somatic hypnotherapist on the show. So I'm super excited because I'm fascinated with this. And I would love to start out just explaining to everyone what somatic hypnotherapy is.
Well, the reason I'm your first is there's one, when I looked under somatic hypnotherapy on Google, there's only one other person who described themselves that way. So
well, good. It's good to stand out. You don't be like all the sheep.
So here's the thing. Most people think of hypnosis and maybe they saw the movie Get Out or they've seen somebody with a watch. Those things don't really happen, but what often happens is people get you nice and relaxed and have you picture going down all these stairs and all these other things. But because I have some background in techniques that were somatic, I started using those with my hypnosis clients, and I found that not only did they work as well, it was actually much faster.
Nice.
And hypnosis, MRIs have shown that hypnosis connects the mind and the body together. A study in Stanford in 2016 that was reported in Time magazine talked about that. So going straight to the body instantly ties you to your subconscious mind. And so when I work with someone, and whether they're working with anxiety or whether they're working with, maybe they're trying to lose weight or they're trying to stop smoking, I just ask them to think about a time they recently that they were either anxious or wanted a cigarette or wanted to eat something, wanted to eat whatever their poison is. And then I just have them notice where they feel that in their body. And generally, they'll feel it in a certain place. And typically, it's kind of the throat, the chest, the solar plexus, which is the midriff, or the belly. And once you go there, then you can start asking, well, how old were you the first time you had that sensation? And they may not know right away, but I can then say, were you 10 or under, or were you 11 or older? And generally, I get an answer to that, like 90% of the time. So that sometimes I'll have to switch to something else. And once we know 10 and under or 11 or older, then we can just start splitting the difference until at some point we have an age. I was 3, I was 7, I was 14. And once we have an age, then I can ask this really wonderful question, which is, where were you? If you were at school, were you in the classroom? Were you in the lunchroom? Were you in the hallway? Were you in the playground? If you were home, what room were you, inside or outside? What room were you in? Who were you with? And what were you upset about? And then we get to a really specific story. And here's the interesting thing about what happens next. Whatever it is, we're upset about something, and it's something that either hurt us, made us angry, or made us sad,
Right.
or scared rather. Hurt and sad are the same thing. And
Pretty
so
much.
there's this universal thing that happens. This is one of the most amazing things I've discovered through working with, doing this thousands of times with people. Um, I have people say, blank, it really hurt me when you blank. I've made it so simple that I have 3 fill in the blank sentences. The first is, it really hurt me, or it made me mad, or it made me scared. And that's all you
Right.
really need. And what's really interesting is when you say that, let's say, Mom, it really hurt me when you criticize me all the time. Mom, in your mind, who isn't there, some of my clients have dead parents. It,
Right.
and it's certainly not there. The mom that you had when you were 7 is definitely never going to show up again.
Right.
So, but she will always say, one way or another, she's always going to make an excuse. Well, I did that for your own good, or I thought you needed that, or that's how my mother treated me. So but it's only happening inside us. It's not, there's no one else there. This
Right.
is some negative, subconscious, emotional, or mental belief that we carry that makes us wrong for something someone did that hurt us, or made us mad, or made us scared. And,
Right.
and so the magic of this process, which is what I call my Defy Trauma process, is that eventually you get to a place where you get Mom or whoever it was to say, I'm sorry, I love you, you're a great kid, I never should have done that, or whatever. I mean, bullies, they usually don't say I love you, but and it feels weird. And so I have all these things I take people through for that parent. A lot of times the parent, like if a parent wants you to be, won't, only loves you when you're perfect, it turns
Mhm.
out they were afraid they would be abandoned if you weren't perfect. So there's this
Right.
process I do with, to either get the parent to come around to that place, or sometimes the parent is so etched in stone in your mind that you can't get the parent to that place. And that's where, I call it the understudy technique. And this comes out of, ultimately, it's something that came out of psychodrama. So psychodrama is something where you connect to something kind of similarly. The way I was taught it was with most people, not everybody does it this way, but I had a therapist who had done a bunch of somatic work. But you say you get to some kind of scene, you play it out with someone else playing the negative parent, and then you retrain them to also be the good parent and say all the things that you tell them. You actually can switch places with them, and you say the things that you want them to say, and then you turn around and you be yourself, and they get to be the good parent saying, I love you, you're a great kid, I'm sorry, never should have done that,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. But I realized that you don't have to use, you can do this all in your mind. You don't need to do it with another person. And
Right.
so I started going with, well, how about someone, think of someone you know and love, that you trust, or think of a character from a book, a TV show, a movie, or a comic book, or think of someone like, Beyonce, or one of the actors or actresses in Friends.
I saw that. I was like, what? I have to ask him
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. And so my favorite was somebody used Betty and Wilma from the Flintstones.
Oh my
Well, that's
gosh.
perfect because there's no baggage with the, well, maybe I don't remember the Flintstones that well, but those were pretty good moms, as I
Right.
recall. Bam Bam and Pebbles had it pretty good.
Exactly. You know what it kind of reminds me of in a way? Years ago, I did EMDR.
Uh-huh.
And there's certain things that you described that are very familiar with that, because I was taken back in a moment in time of my life that was pretty traumatic to me. And, I know it involves eye movement and everything like that, but you're training the brain of a new scenario almost,
Right.
like a rescuer to come in, like, I was told, bring someone in. It could be anything fictitious. It could be Superman if you wanted. It
Yeah,
could be
yeah.
someone that you held dear and that like came into your story. And then you get to rewrite the ending to it. So it kind of seems like I know it's two separate things, but it's very similar to that in a way where
Well,
you're rewriting the narrative, so to speak.
yes, yes, absolutely. And that's with psychodrama and several other things. The difference between EMDR and what I do is EMDR makes you go into the story of what happened.
Yes. That was
And
hard.
you don't need to do that. That's the thing I don't like about EMDR. And then also, like, they won't do things like in the womb and stuff like that, where I've had clients where that's what showed up. But the thing about EMDR is you have to, go through this whole process of reliving the story. But the story isn't really what it's about.
Right.
You can heal this stuff without going into the story. There are three things you need to heal when you're healing trauma and the root cause of anxiety and the root cause of anything that's triggered. And those three things are the leftover emotional and physical tension you're carrying in your body from what happened, the negative self-beliefs you're carrying, which are really, I just showed you that really well. And then the
Right.
third thing, there's this shamanic process called a soul retrieval from native cultures. And
Ooh.
I hate the name soul retrieval because it's not really I mean, I think native cultures really do believe you're getting back a piece of your soul. What you're doing really is when bad things happen, we squash something inside us. We repress something because it's not safe to have that still with us.
Right.
And so, whether it's our sense of safety or our sense of joy, our sense of self-love. And so the soul retrieval that I was taught could take hours, but I condensed it into this 5-minute process or less sometimes that I often use at the end of a session, not every time, but also when I'm like, oh wow, we did a lot. Well, let's do this. And
Right.
it's a really simple process where I used to take people to a beautiful place, but somebody's beautiful place was the library. Now I use the library a lot because I don't have to figure out where people are. Just like go to the library. On one of the tables is a beautifully wrapped present. And when you open the present, inside is something symbolic. And I don't know what it is. It just kind of shows up. And sometimes it's things like, rubies or a beautiful piece of jewelry or clothing, but sometimes it's balls of light. Sometimes it's, uh, yeah, balls of light are a lot. Sometimes it's a heart. A lot of plush toys show up.
Aw.
And my favorite, I think, is a guy who was bald. Inside was the hairbrush he used to brush his mullet before he would go out as a teenager. And that
Aw.
represented joy. And
Wow.
there's certain questions you have to ask with these things, and then you bring them into your body, and this transformation occurs, and you feel it. You feel them enter your body. I had one woman who had been depressed for 20 years. Her husband had been murdered at work by someone they knew and loved, and she'd been
Oh,
depressed ever since then. For good reason, right? I mean,
worse.
and she would come to me every week wearing the same gray sweats. Every single week, the gray sweatshirt, top things, zipper hoodie kind of thing, and the gray sweatpants. So she must have been wearing that every day. And
Right.
so we did this piece of work, and she got rubies. And I said to her, well, I said, ask the rubies what they need in order to stay with you forever. And they meant, red, the color of the heart, self-love,
Right.
really, right?
Right.
So they said, you need to allow love in. I said, are you willing to do that? And she said, no. And I love no, because
Mm,
no means you have resistance there. And when you have resistance there and you do a little bit of work and the resistance goes, some really cool things can happen.
right.
So we did that work. And at the end of the session, back in the days when I had an office instead of just Zoom, She was laying in the recliner looking super peaceful, but it was normal. This is what
Right.
happens at the end of every session with everybody on Zoom or not Zoom. And I didn't think anything of it, but the next week she came in wearing new blue jeans and a pink top, and she had a lovely sense of color. I have a special thing for color, so it like
Right.
matched in a way that I really appreciated. And she said, my son didn't recognize me. We had dinner last
Oh,
night. He hadn't seen her not depressed since he
right.
was 9 years old. He was 29 now, and he didn't recognize her, and the depression lifted because of this piece of work.
Wow.
Because we got to what it was that she was squashing, which was self.
Right. The root.
Yeah, yeah. And so that piece is something. So in this 5-step process, what we're doing is we're finding the core wound underneath the whatever it is, and sometimes you know it, and sometimes it's a complete surprise, and sometimes like, oh, I used to remember that, but I don't remember that anymore. But it's this really powerful thing. But the thing is, I talk to people who say, well, I went over that over and over again in therapy. I know everything about the time, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but that's knowing doesn't do
Right.
anything because you're still carrying the material. I just actually finished with a client today who's been working on this thing with a therapist. And it was a specific thing around his father. And all this work that he was doing with this therapist just gave him kind of the information and
Right.
a taste of what he felt, but it doesn't get rid of the feeling.
Right. You
And
get to the
so,
why, but you don't, but subconsciously it's still there. So yeah, you have the answers of the why, but you're still carrying it in your body.
yeah, Werner Erhard, who did Est, who I don't particularly like much about Est, but he did say that knowing is the booby, understanding is the booby prize.
Right.
And the real prize is the release.
Right.
And this is transformational. People have experience. So the people have experiences, unlike talk therapy, for example, where you talk and maybe you feel a little better, but you still have stuff that's happening. This transforms you every single time you do it. There's a shift, and
Wow.
really profound shifts. And sometimes people are a little tired from it.
Right.
And I had one person get a rash for 4 days afterwards, and then a promotion on the 5th day. The rash left, and the promotion happened.
Wow. Well, I mean, I could imagine because, I also feel that us, we carry a lot of things subconsciously in our early childhood too, that our subconscious is what protects us, right? So there are things that might have happened in our early childhoods, even in our early teenage years, where we've mentally blocked out. So in one respect, you feel like you may know the root cause of it, but it might be something completely different that you subconsciously buried that's still causing effect in your body and you're not even
Right,
aware of it.
right. And not only that, sometimes I know from, a lot of this comes from my own inner work. And then
Right.
I experimented with other people, and I learned modalities, but what I do combines things in a very different. It's like I have this kind of strange talent for making things, going for all the meat super fast and leave out the BS part. So,
Why not?
but here's what I've discovered is you may get rid of a layer of the emotions, and maybe 6 months later or a year later, there's a deeper. Sometimes these things take time. Sometimes the
Right.
subconscious gives up what it wants to give up when it wants to give up. So there's a layer you may do, and then you may wind up coming back to it. It's like, wow, I didn't realize this is much deeper. But
Right.
it's like you've been lifting weight, right? So when you go
Right.
from 50 to 100 pounds, it seems like a lot. But when you go from 100 pounds to 125 pounds, that's not as big a deal. I mean, I haven't lifted weight in a while. Maybe it is a big deal. Today it would be a really big deal. I'm working my way back to the gym after a vacation.
Aw. So tell me, I'd love to know what are these ways to, because you're saying we can do it ourselves. So what would be the way? How do we hypnotize ourselves out of anxiety? Or maybe we know subconsciously, you know what, I'm not feeling good in my body. I can't connect it to something that's currently going on in my life, but I know something's still there. How can we shift out of this?
Okay, well, there's two things. So you in a way you asked two different questions. One, because you were referring to my 1 minute anxiety solutions. So let's
Right.
start there. And actually, one of the techniques that I'll talk about, I actually use also after you trigger after you find the root cause of something. So we'll be
Okay.
efficient here.
Got it. Let's do it.
So so a lot of, again, it's so if you notice where you feel anxious in your body, maybe I'll give you two of these. So you can just say, so just let yourself kind of connect to your body where you feel tense. And we can let everybody in the audience do this at the same time if they're not. You can probably do this while you're driving too, but don't close your eyes, obviously.
Oh, gosh, no. Don't do that. Don't do that, guys.
But just if you notice this place of tension, just imagine there is a magician's hat right there. And then, you know that old magic trick with the handkerchief? Where you pull
Yes.
on one handkerchief. Well, that's what you're going to do here. When you see you feel the handkerchief, I mean, feel the magician's hat right there, and just pull on the handkerchief, and you just keep pulling, and let all the handkerchiefs that are there come out, and you just keep going. And for some people it's really fast. Sometimes it takes longer.
Wow.
And then you take all the handkerchiefs, smush them in a ball, and throw them into the sun, and you let them go. And that works for two reasons. One, you're releasing something somatically, but also it changes the part of your brain you're using. When you
Okay.
do these kind of visualizations or imaginations, because you don't actually have to see the magician's hat, you just have to be aware of it and just have this sense of pulling something out. So if you're not a visual,
Guys, I think we froze in the middle of a live recording, so bear with me here. You
can't
have to blame
tell them,
technology. We
yeah,
froze. That's okay.
yeah, okay, good. All right. I had a thing that wanted to update on my screen, but I've seen a bunch of people on TikTok talking about if you ask them to picture a bright red apple, they can't do it.
Right.
So if there's if you can do the sensation thing, then you can do it that way. You can use auditory stuff, but if you can't, you can't. And there's nothing that works for everybody. But what this does is when you're using your imagination this way, you're using the more modern parts of the brain and not what I like to call the cave brain, which is it's the amygdala mostly.
Right.
But amygdala is Greek for almonds because it's almond shaped part of your brain. So you
Right.
get this very fancy scientific word that takes a while to memorize, at least it did for me.
Oh,
It's like amygdala. Yeah, almonds.
it's an almond, guys. It's an almond.
So I call it the cave brain because I'll explain kind of the cause of anxiety in the first place later on about cave people. Um, but it shifts the speed your brain is operating at.
Okay, that makes
So,
sense.
so anxiety and thinking have certain wavelengths that the brain operates at. But when you switch to the visual and more modern parts of the brain, visual, auditory, imaginative parts of the brain, it slows it down to the point where you're actually it's moving at the speed when you have dreamless sleep.
Okay.
Dreamless sleep is the most relaxing time of sleep. When you wake up and you don't remember anything, but you know that you slept, that's actually makes you the most relaxed. I had a session with a woman who was a therapist who told me that when she looked at her Apple Watch the week before, her heart rate was slower during our session than it was at any other point in the day.
Wow.
Because that's what happens when you use these things.
Right.
So that's one of the 1 minute anxiety solutions. Some of them are not hypnotic. So just to give people another one simple thing is to breathe in and then breathe out with a buzzing sound. I call this a bee breath, and you just go bzzz,
Hmm.
and that stimulates a nerve called the vagus nerve, which
Right.
is a nerve that makes you more socially connected and feel safer. But the other thing
Wow.
it does is the buzzing sound. You can breathe out for a really long time with the buzzing sound. It's a much longer exhale. And you know how
Right.
people tell you to calm down by you take some deep breaths when you calm down? That's wrong.
No, it increases the heart rate.
Well, it does, but it doesn't. See, it
Okay.
depends on how you do it. See, the inhale gets you ready to fight, flight, or freeze. So you're
Okay.
ready if a woolly mammoth were about to attack, you're ready to do what has to happen. But the exhale, which is activates what's called the parasympathetic system.
Right.
And that system is the rest and digest portion. That's the system that returns you to calm.
Right.
So taking deep breaths is terrible if you're only doing the inhale deep and the outhale short. So you have to, if you're going to breathe deeply, you need to at least go half and half. So,
Okay.
at least count it out, breathe in for 6, breathe out for 6. That's the easiest technique you can ever use because, you can count and it doesn't require a lot. But, a longer exhale is even better. And so this bee breath thing works because it stimulates the vagus nerve, but it also makes you take much longer out breath than your in breath.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Do you see it very similar in that way with the visualization? It's almost like a form of meditation too, because when we're visually thinking about something, we're preoccupied and calming down that parasympathetic system
Well, I
to
think
not be
that's
in fight,
true.
flight, freeze, right?
Well, you've already changed the part of your brain that puts you into fight, flight, or freeze. That's what
Right,
visualization is using. And the way it works is the modern part of the brain tells visualization is using the modern part of the brain, which says, hey, cave brain, guess what? She's not going to die because she's able to use this part of the brain. So she's safe.
right. Well,
And,
then
and
explain about the cave brain because I know that we haven't really evolved in that way. We're constantly running from the bear. We're always in survival mode. Do you feel that's because of all the stimulation going on in this world with technology, with how news media, social media, all these influences? We're always in this fight, flight, freeze, stress response mode where we can't calm down.
I think there's a lot of trauma out there. I think there's a lot of
Agreed.
childhood stuff. And so we're trying to avoid feeling things and we don't feel safe in the first place. Because when you feel safe, you don't need that, you don't need to death scroll on TikTok or Instagram, right?
Right.
It becomes boring at
Right.
times when you're already calm and fulfilled. But we have these huge, what I call them pattern matching allergies, right? Because anxiety is really a simple pattern match that your body is allergic to. It thinks, oh, this situation is going to kill me, right? An allergy is your immune system responding to something thinking that it's going to kill you
Right.
or harm you. So anxiety is a pattern matching allergy. And the way, so just to give you the cave brain story is, so imagine you were attacked by a woolly mammoth near yellow grass and you escape by the skin of your teeth. And then a few days later, grandma invites you over for a nice bison dinner and you enjoy yourself. And then you go retire to the back of the cave where grandma has painted some yellow cave paintings of yellow horses. Your cave brain is thinking yellow, right? Yellow grass, yellow painting. I'm gonna die. And so you start going into, you're having the symptoms like a rapid heart rate or nausea or sweating or, chest pain, all the things that would get you ready to either fight, freeze, or flee.
Right.
But it's because your cave brain makes sloppy pattern matches. So one of the reasons I wrote the 1 minute anxiety solution ebook, which you can find at anxiety123.com. I want to make my website as easy as 123.
That
So
is easy.
anxiety123.com. I listened to a lot of podcasts, sometimes people I knew or had actually spent money with, and they put out their website. And I was like, I can't remember that website.
That's super easy to remember.
Yeah, I
Super
mean, there's a
easy.
guy named Quajo, and I'm like, I have to hear it a million times, but anxiety, it's as easy as 123,
1, 2, 3. I
anxiety123.com.
love it.
It's got 57 ways to lower anxiety in a minute. And the reason this works is anxiety, your cave brain is going to think you're going to die unless you actually do whatever it's stopping you from. And
Right.
the gold standard of healing anxiety is called exposure therapy, which is basically doing whatever it is that makes you anxious. But that sucks.
Right.
It's
It does.
really hard. You're sitting there with your heart beating 150 beats per minute. And so there's a middle ground, and these 1 minute anxiety solutions slow you down, calm you down. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be enough so that you can keep going. I had
Right.
one day where I had a ghostwriting business for a long time, and one day where I could not make myself go to Starbucks to do some writing, or when I did, I walked for lunch, and all this anxiety came up, and I just kept on having to do a few of these different techniques at different times. And
Right.
so this is kind of like, it's a little bit of a band-aid approach in that it is and it isn't, but it's a little bit one at a time. So you can
Right.
get over anxiety for one thing using these approaches, and they're really valuable. And this really works. Simultaneously, if you can get to when you pull out a weed from the root, rather than, mow the lawn. And
You were saying.
you have a whole different experience, but these are valuable. One other that I'll tell you, because then we can use it for the getting to the root cause 3-minute exercise. This is similar in some ways to the magician's hat, but it's with a fire hose.
Okay.
And so what you're going to do is you notice where you feel tension in your body. Let's say your stomach. I have a sensation that I'm kind of an empath, so I feel what's going on in other people's bodies. So, and weird things happen. The one weird thing about my sessions is that I burp stuff out for people because this field forms between us, and they will find that they yawn or they burp or their stomach growls. I also, because this they pick up on my comfort going to the places I've done it for 37 years, so I'm
Wow.
really comfortable going somewhere difficult. And then, the first time, each time, even then, it's like, anything new is a little bit harder. but
Small.
but people pick up on it, and so instead of lifting 50 pounds, they're able to lift 200 pounds with me. And
Right.
so they pick up on me that way, and I pick up on them, and I will sometimes yawn, sometimes burp, usually burp for sure. And sometimes my stomach will growl. And these are all ways people release emotions, and also maybe little muscle spasms. If my stomach growls, it means that something worked really well, and I can say, "Hey, that worked really well," and it's because my stomach just growled. So these are the kind of the weird things about working with me, but really profound things happen.
Right.
So one of the techniques that I use a lot, or used to use a lot, um, is this fire hose technique. So you notice anyway, I'm an empath, so I was kind of feeling your stomach as we were talking.
Yes, you're dead on. I was gonna tell you,
Yeah,
like, you're dead on.
yeah, and I'm beginning to burp too. So oh well.
I'm not, I'm not, I'm definitely not nervous. It's not that.
Yeah,
But I've
no,
been, I've been
it's just a
having
place
stomach
where
issues lately.
yeah, it's a place where you're holding tension. And
Yep.
so what we can do is just imagine there's a fire hydrant right there,
Okay.
and just notice what color it is. Sometimes what color is the main part, what color is the cap, where you take off the cap to turn on the water. And some people have just red, but some people have things like purple and silver. And so whatever shows up for you. And then you unscrew the cap and you attach a fire hose to it.
Okay.
And then you imagine holding the fire hose by the Grand Canyon. Or if you're not familiar with the Grand Canyon, if you have an international audience, something that the water can go into. And I like to sometimes have somebody else hold the hose. So you can have someone who you know and love and trust to hold the hose for you.
Okay.
And or it could be a character, same thing as what I mentioned before with the understudy. And you just let the water go through the hose into the Grand Canyon. And it may keep going until the Grand Canyon is full, in which case you can let the water drain, which happens super fast. It doesn't, it's not like a bathtub. It's much
It's
faster.
draining. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and then you
filling.
just keep filling it up, and at a certain point when you're done, you'll just come to a drip. And this has been pretty universal. The people got it. Yeah, every once in a while, this technique. I had a fireman. This really didn't work for all.
He's like, what? No, but like just me visualizing that, I feel different in my stomach area.
Yes.
Because when you did the other technique with the with the
Handkerchiefs.
with the magician's hat, I was feeling it up here. And that's when I was picturing it. And I've had like shoulder pain for days and it's gone. It's gone. Guys, it's gone. I'm telling you, this stuff works.
If they're trying it, I hope you're trying it at home with me, because part of the my purpose in doing these is letting people have experiences. So at anxiety123.com, I also am sharing what I call your emotional overload first aid kit.
Ooh, I like that.
And where we're going right now, it will also have that in writing that you can download. So if you fill out the form, you have to click on it. That's kind of my link tree kind of thing. So you
Okay.
just click on the button that says emotional overload first aid kit, and there's a free uh whatever first aid kit free PDF.
Nice. No, that's great.
So, but I'm going to tell you how to do it right now and let people go through it with me. So once
Okay.
again, just you can either think of a time you were anxious, or think of a time where whatever your habit is that you don't want to do, you do, or just you don't actually have to have anything. You can just notice where you feel tension in your body. I have clients who work with me for years, and we get to a point where there's nothing they need to work on per se, but when you notice where you feel tension in your body, it takes you to a place that's unresolved. So whatever it is, just notice where you feel something in your body,
Okay.
and then ask yourself, how old was I the first time I had that tension? And you can go 0 to 10 or 11 to whatever. Usually I do 11 to 20. Sometimes people have older. If it's neither of those, then you can do 20s, 30s, 40s, 50, I don't want to cover it all. But then just start splitting the difference. So let's say it's under 10, it's under 10. Was I 0 to 5? Was I 6 to 10? And then you can kind of split the difference again, or you can just go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if you don't quite get it, if you know it's 6 to 8, you can call it 7. We're close enough.
Right.
And you'll have something will come to mind. And I've been talking a lot. Usually I give people more space.
No, it's fine. You're educating us. I love
Yeah.
this. Are you
And
kidding? I'm learning something.
so whatever it is, and I talked about how to do this before, so this will sound familiar. You're going to ask, where was I? Was I at home or school or someplace else? Generally, 7, it's either home or school. Typically, could be at grandma's house though, whatever it is. And then what room was I in? At school, lunchroom, outside, in the classroom. And who was I upset with? And when you have that scene, and now if that didn't work for you, here's the workaround. So if that didn't work, we're just going to have you imagine being in the library, and you're sitting
Okay.
on one of those hard chairs, and you can feel the hard chair against your butt, and you can see the lights, the phosphorescent lights, fluorescent lights, that's what I mean. And you hear the sound of whispers, and pages turning and click clacking of computers. And in front of you is this big bookshelf. And it's one of those bookshelves where if you take some books off, you can see behind it to the next, right behind there. So you can take take 5 books off, put them on the floor, feel the books, and take another 5 and put them on the other 5 books. And then you look through that window you made to the next shelf, behind that shelf, and you'll see yourself at a different age, at a specific age. And when you do that, you can ask her to come out, and you can ask her, what's going on? Where were you? What is it that upset you? Where were you? When, all the same questions. Where were you? Who were you with? What were you upset about? And then the very next step is to have that younger self say to whoever hurt her, let's say it's your dad, Dad, it really hurt me when you blank, when you were so strict with me, or whatever, or whatever Dad did. And Dad will make an excuse. And so that's kind of where you get there. And then the rest is the kind of thing that I cover in my Defy Trauma course. And
Right.
I literally step by step, people have had experiences with that. I have people who bought that course where I was jealous that they did it on their own and I didn't get them to do it.
Aw.
Like, holy crap. It's really, really, really amazing. And the interesting thing about this work is that secrets get revealed.
Right.
People discover other people's stuff. One guy knew that the reason his mother stayed with his dad, who was mentally ill, and she eventually drank herself to death when he
Oh
was a
gosh.
teenager. But he realized the reason she stayed with him was because everybody in the family criticized her about marrying him, and she didn't want to give them, she didn't want to look bad to them after that happened.
Right.
So she stayed
Wow.
because of that. Another guy who was in his 70s came home when he was 3 years old. His mom came home in a stretcher and upstairs, and nobody told him anything. He realized at 70 something years old, and this had affected him for 70 years, that his mother had had an abortion.
Oh
And
wow.
it was illegal back then. And so nobody told him what was going on. And of course, little kids, when nobody tells you something, they think it's their fault.
Right.
And B, if they don't tell you, then it's like you did something really, really bad.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that secret was revealed. Another woman I worked with discovered that the boys who bullied her, one boy was jealous that his brother was the favorite, and also his parents wanted a girl. And
Wow.
there's just this, I don't know how this works or why it works, but the thing about knowing these reasons is it helps you to stop believing there's something wrong with you
Right.
when you really understand, or why the kid bullied you or whatever it is. And this method just gives you that in a way that I've never seen anything else, that lets you understand other people in your life and the things that happen. The other thing that's really interesting, and I wind up doing this, I teach this in the Defy Trauma program, but also I do this in sessions with people. Often in the first session is a lot of science proves that we're cursed, and
Wow. I'm
and
so curious about this.
yes, the science proves that we're cursed, and it's two things. It's called on one level, it's epigenetic psychology, which means we inherit through the sperm and the egg the unprocessed trauma of not just our
Yep.
parents but also our grandparents.
I believe that. I do believe that for sure.
And secondly, we also pick up on the subconscious of our parents through osmosis, and also siblings and things like that. Anyone we're around, we will take it in. And they've discovered, science says that kids who are around parents who fight develop asthma. I mean, there's a correlate. I mean, let me rephrase it. Kids with asthma often have parents who are fighting. And there's and that means you're picking up on that. You're picking up on all this energy. And I see this with people all the time. It's in the course how to do it, but it's also just something I do in my process where I have people get rid of the energy that they're
Right.
carrying from other people. And it's a simple question. I do a lot of muscle testing just for emotional things to say yes or no. But you don't have to, I mean, people who don't do muscle testing are still getting answers, whereas I'll have an intuition, I'll say just, and you don't need an intuition, you can just ask, does this feeling belong to me? Is this grief I'm feeling, does it belong to me or does it belong to someone else?
Right.
And you can't work on the material that belongs to someone else.
That's right.
You just
We're
have to
all
let them,
energy.
yeah, you just have to let them take it back. And so, like, I do things with magnets and straws and all kinds of things like
I'm
that.
big into crystals. Like
Yeah.
obviously I'm a crystal girl because that's energy too.
Um,
And I agree with you on that, Mahesh, because realistically, we've learned to take in other people's stuff and it weighs us down. And I think society needs to learn. I know I've learned over the years, like what is not mine, I send back with love. I really
Oh,
do
you
because
don't
it's
even
not
have
mine
to,
to carry.
you don't have to send it back. You can just, I do things like have them hold a magnet and they can go on a magnet, and the magnet is imaginary, obviously, and it's a giant
Right.
magnet. And sometimes it's a room divider if they're really a lot. As a magnet only holds so much, and I have them toss it into the sun. You don't have to give it back to people. You just have to get it out of you.
Right. Wow. I send it back with love. This way they cannot keep sending bad energy my way. So
Yeah.
that's why I tend to send it back. I go return to sender with love so that my love goes back to them and is like, you need some healing. You need some good,
We'll
you
just
need
send
some
them,
good juju.
get rid of the stuff because they don't need the stuff. But you can send them love anyway. Just
Right.
let the stuff go. It doesn't need to be anywhere. Nobody needs it.
Right. You're right about that.
So you can
That's
send
for
them
sure.
as much love as you want, but just who needs that stuff?
True.
My ex-wife used to think that you needed that stuff. You needed to give it back to the person. I was like, and then there was a guy in my men's group who said, no, I don't want to give it back. And I've discovered it turns out you don't have to give it back, which is nice.
Yeah, that is nice. That is nice. I've always been taught to return to sender with love. So
Yeah, yeah.
this new theory, I like this. I like that you could just be like, you know what? Denied, like wherever it goes, like drop it, throw it off the cliff, whatever you want to visualize, and here's
Yeah,
love.
well, here, when I've used
That.
this magnet technique, a lot of times it's sludge or magnetic filings or crap. I had one woman whose mother was incredibly critical, and it was daggers.
Oh,
So you don't want to give somebody back daggers.
no, not really. No.
Just let the
No.
daggers go into the universe. I mean, yeah, but it does free something up.
Right. Especially when you don't carry that weight anymore and you don't carry
Yeah.
that. What would you say for people that can't remember? Because again, it does, like, especially for people that have been through a lot of trauma in their lives, and subconsciously our subconscious is protecting that. So it's not allowing us to think of the root or a specific time period or how one can relate what they're feeling in their body to a certain pinpoint in their lives. What would
Here's
you
the thing.
advise on
This works a hell of a lot of the time. So that's number one. Number two, when it doesn't work, then we go to the library, and we're gonna go find the person of the age that's blocking, and we get to
that?
talk to them. And the questions I typically ask for somebody like that, and we all have places where we're blocked. I just did work on being blocked yesterday for myself. Um, and I was avoided it for many hours. And but you get to the point where you'll see that person behind the bookshelf, and they come out, and first off, you ask them, do you know that I'm X year, I'm, in my case, if do you know that I'm 64 years old now? Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, and they look at you. And I had one guy, we did this with every age from about 3 on to 18. And this is the guy with the bald guy. And every single one of them came out and said, "Where's our hair?"
Oh my God.
But what happens is you get to that little kid or 10-year-old or 15-year-old, and you ask them, "Are you tired of the job of protecting me from seeing what's upsetting me?" And
Right.
they'll probably say yes. I usually get a yes on that every single time. And this comes a little bit from internal family systems, although I work with it quite differently because they have all kinds of different characters. And for me, it's usually your mom. It's you at a certain age, and maybe you at another age is protecting is involved with the the 10-year-old may have something to do with the 6-year-old, but almost always it's like if you're really blocked, it's your mom doesn't want you to be aware of your anger, or your dad doesn't want you to be aware, and it's like at most 2 or 3 things, and typically parents every time. So it's very simple. And you don't need to worry about, this part wants this and that. It's very simple. So let's say it's your 6-year-old self doesn't want you to, is protecting. Are you tired of the job of protecting me from seeing what what makes me so sad? Yes. Are you willing to retire from that job? That's where it can get complicated because they may say no. A lot of the times they say yes. Sometimes they'll say no, and then they'll have their excuse. They're afraid you can't handle it, or mom or dad said it wasn't okay for them to see that or know that. And then you can kind of work with that. And it's a little bit like telemarketing.
Right. So it's almost like doing some inner child work and going back to that inner child and allowing them to let go of that. Like, okay, now the roles are reversed. I'm the adult me now, and I'm going to
Yeah.
protect
And
the little child to release that and let it go.
or let the mom release that. Let the mom
Right.
say it's okay, or maybe mom is doing it for dad, and dad says no, it's okay, and then you say, "Mom, did you hear that?" and it's a little, it's usually not more than 3 parts, and I don't think I've ever had more than 3 parts at a time, but sometimes you have that much. And I literally
Wow.
explained the step-by-step process for this in the Defy Trauma program. So if you
No,
want to do it on your own, you can do it on your own and not too expensively. And if you want help with it, I do it, I work with people one-on-one in a way that just changes things really, really
I love
drastically.
this. Mahesh, I love this. I would love for you to, I definitely put everyone's information in the description box, but for those of you who are listening on Spotify, can you please let my viewers know where to find you?
Well, this is it. It's as easy as 123, anxiety123.com. You can set up a free consult. You can get my book. You can get your free emotional overload first aid kit. In a few weeks, I'll be doing a free lose the anxiety breakthrough healing session, where you go through processes that like this to get rid of one thing that makes you anxious, get to the root cause of one thing that makes you anxious. And so, between the Defy Trauma, those are all the things. That's all the levels. They're all at anxiety123.com. Because again, you got to make it as easy as 123. I only
Love
listen to
it.
podcasts in the car or on at the gym.
Yep.
And so I don't usually go to websites unless I'm really, really desperate at that point. Or there's something like, oh, I've got to get the free download that comes with this episode. Um, and even then, I don't always remember to do it. So I wanted to be a mnemonic to make it a super easy to remember kind of thing.
I
Um,
love it.
yeah. And then what was I going to say? I had one more thing. Um, no, it's gone. I
It's
mean,
just
the other
one
thing
of
is
those days.
sometimes the other person is a past life or an ancestor.
Ooh, okay.
Sometimes, and I don't have the how to do a past life in the course because it's taken me a while to standardize that because it's really, really difficult to
Right.
that sometimes. I've had people who have had animal past lives show up. And
Oh,
that has been really sometimes like, oh my God, what do I ask? Somebody was a
especially if it's, yeah, an animal. Like, how do you even
well, like, I mean,
communicate?
the first one I had was a swan. This woman, every time she would say, you would say the word mouse to her, if you she would touch her throat every single time. And eventually we got to the point where, and I didn't get to get her to let go of it all the way because it took us a long time because I was trying all these other things. And she
Right,
never came back for a second session. But it's also like the resistance of the 6-year-old. The past life characters need to be treated the same way as
right.
the people from this life. And so what would happen? So we got to this point where she was a swan. And that was a good first animal past life because I kind of know what a swan does. They swim and they eat and they sleep.
Right.
And we got to this point, and I said, well, can you see how you died? She said, no, I don't want to do that. I said, well, let's go to the next day. And she said, no, I want to go to sleep. And so she went to this rock to go to sleep. Remember how I told you every time she heard the word mouse, she would touch her, a whole bunch of mice came and ate her neck. I mean,
Oh,
that's the part of the swan, right? That's exactly
right.
the only place a mouse would ever be able to get to a swan. So while she was sleeping, these mice descended upon her and ate her neck, and that's why every time she would hear the word mouse. What I didn't get to work with her on was, let's ask the part of you if it knows that you're okay now, and that you're willing to.
Wow.
Are you tired of the job of protecting her from mice? It would
It's
eventually
really
say,
interesting that even our past lives, and if we are in other forms, that those carry over.
only
That's
the
really
difficult
interesting.
ones. People,
Yeah,
I've remembered 30, 40, 50 of my past lives. And I don't recommend, only because there's trauma associated with them. I didn't even do it on purpose. They would just show up as something to
right.
work on. But so if you don't remember your past lives, good for you. It's I
I
always
don't.
say you're lucky.
I sure don't. I don't.
Yeah, yeah. And you
No,
you will if you
no
need to,
idea.
if it's connected to something else. Then I had somebody else who had a life as a water buffalo or as a buffalo. And I'm like,
Wow.
what the heck am I going to ask him?
Right.
I said, well, did
Wow.
you,
I wonder if we
you
were
know,
all animals in one point. Like before, like before we were humans. Like I wonder if we were all animals. Life.
I'm sure we've been different things.
Oh yeah. I
The thing
believe
is,
that.
here's the really interesting thing. Whether you believe in past lives or not, you'll discover that as you do these kinds of work, they're very emotional. I've had
Yeah.
people say, I don't believe in past lives, crying from something that happened.
Oh, I totally do.
And the really
Totally.
interesting thing is when we do childhood work, usually people aren't like totally, it's the past life stuff that breaks them up. And
Right.
does this really, because it's never been touched on.
Right.
So
I
yeah,
agree. Wow. Oh my gosh, Mahesh, this has been amazing. I can't thank you enough for giving us your time today and sharing all this beautiful knowledge that is new to me, that's new to my listeners. Like, I'm super excited and grateful that you took the time out to sit with me today and discuss all this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so, so much.
my pleasure. And
Oh,
it's
guys.
great to have somebody who really gets it too.
Gosh, yes. No, absolutely. Like I'm fascinated by this. And I want to provide my listeners all the tools, and showcase different beautiful souls out there that are trying to help people, trying to help heal people in different modalities. And I just love that somatic therapy could be part of their tools now. And
Right,
I will
right.
definitely put all your stuff in the description box. I always do for all the people that come on here and share their wisdom with us. So thank you so, so much.
My pleasure.
Oh, guys, thank you so, so much for today. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and Mr. Mahesh today to share this beautiful wisdom and knowledge with you guys. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, share this video with someone if you think they need to contact Mahesh and get his expertise in this. And I will see you guys on the next episode. Thanks, guys. Take care.